Hello, my friends, and welcome to Quartet. So nice to have you with us. It's a sunshiny day here in Berkeley Springs, West Virginia, and we're getting together here to do a deep dive into a very interesting subject related to how we all get prepared for this amazing kind of change that's kind of piling up on the horizon and headed this way. I'm joined today with Penny Kelly. Hi, Penny. Nice to have you with us.
Hi there. Hi, John. Hi, Frank. Hi, Greg, wherever you are. And
And
hello, everybody out there. Go ahead.
yeah, and Frank Jacob. Hi, Frank.
How
Nice to
you
have
doing,
you
John? Hi,
here.
Penny. Hey, Greg. Yeah, wherever you are,
Yeah.
I hope you're good.
So let's go around the table here as we start and say what have you been all thinking about? What's on your mind, Frank? Uh,
Well, we talked a little bit about it on the pre-show chat, and I've been observing this escalation of the Ukraine-Russia drone attack, Russian strategic bomber bases situation. And it's, from over here in Europe, it's a little bit of more precarious situation, you might say. We're kind of within a stone's throw of all of that hot action. And, I'm looking at it and I'm not a particularly big Zelensky fan and never have been. And I just don't trust that guy at all. What happened to me just shows a total insincerity on the part of the so-called trying to achieve peace talks. He was just at the White House. Now, if you plan back in time and look at that, we know now, putting it pieces together, that that whole time he was there, these attacks were already being planned and masterminded. So it means that they probably never intended to even have a peace. That was all just, show. And now Putin's vow of retribution puts everyone on the defensive and into fear mode. I mean, literally, I woke up in the morning after that day and I was thinking, okay, are these psychopathic idiots going to really go for it this time? Because you never know. I mean, the button could be hit at any time. It's not looking good. And I'm asking myself, what is really going on behind the curtain? Why is nobody, for example, talking about the more deeper issues of the psycho-spiritual influence on world events as if they don't exist, right? Because these are going on. I mean, the mainstream opinion is that EU countries are in destitute financial situations, or the Ukraine is, and wars are a great way to divert from that fact. It's true. But I'm wondering if that's not just all a script. You have Zelensky on the one hand, there's this polarity, right? You think that there's this Russia against Ukraine, but Zelensky, he's part of the club of the Yehudin, as they call them, and they're praying for the end times. The culminating of the apocalyptic ending with the Messiah, the curtain call. They take over, the greater Israel, build their temple, take their place in the world. And this is seriously happening in the background, and people aren't talking about it at all. And all indications are that's exactly the direction they're moving in. And on the other side, you have Putin, who on the surface appears to be fighting for the Russian cause, pushing back on NATO, etc. But he's also controlled by a very, very influential group called the Shabbat Lubavitch, the most powerful, influential religious cult on the planet. Let's not kid ourselves here. And they're part of the same thing. Their whole idea is the messianic focus, the coming of the Messiah. So these people are more than happy if there is a total showdown and a total, flaming, smoking ending. And I wonder if sometimes they don't just worm their way into the geopolitical process to bypass the idea of religious rhetoric and then just keep to the shadows while the political pawns make as if they're trying to fight for justice and whatever. Meanwhile, the ultimate meltdown of the planet lurks. And just look at Germany. The government is
yeah,
just drooling, right? They want this. They can't wait for this war. And the EU just raised trillions. And they never asked any of us over here. I never got asked by my government, hey, do you want to invest trillions in a war artillery and machinery and go to war? No, And on the other play is Trump, with and his son-in-law. Where was he on election day? Rabbi Schneerson's tomb. What is that? Well, he's the founder of the Shabbat Lubavitch, right? So are we being triple played here? I wonder, and why is nobody really talking about this? I think we have a right to talk about how deeply entwined these kind of religious ideologies affect politics, but I think it's taboo territory. We can probably only talk about it briefly here on our
Yeah.
show. But
Good.
other than that, I'm happy. I mean, I've got a workshop coming on the weekend. It's already sold out, so I'm totally stoked. That's it from my part.
Yeah. Thank you. Penny, what are you thinking about?
Uh, well, two things. One is the whole Russia thing that Frank was just talking about, and the sense of betrayal, the sense of duplicity is it just boggles me. It's like, how could they be pretending they want to end the war, and then
Yeah.
Zelensky goes and does this, bombs the heck out of Russia and had it planned, and it's not clear, at least to me, maybe it is to somebody somewhere out there, but it isn't clear what role the US is playing, what monies we are contributing, what kinds of guns or bombs or equipment or men we are contributing to that whole effort. And if we're still contributing, then why can't we see that Trump is not wanting to deal with Zelensky if we're the ones contributing all the goodies? So, the stupidity the blatant betrayal, all of that has been on my mind. And the whole question of who authorized that strike into Russia, who is authorized?
Yeah.
And so so that's one thing. The other thing is the reaction to a video that I saw with Dr. Jack Cruz, and he was talking about the origination of Bitcoin. And I was gobsmacked at the end of that video. And my reaction was, after you see the connections, how Bitcoin got started, who was, Satoshi Nakamoto. It's nobody who is claimed to be. And what's the real connection? It's the mob. It's, how pissed off Meyer Lansky was, head of the Jewish mob, that that somebody was trying to play the Germans, or the Jews rather, and his decision was, I'm going to create an economic system, a monetary system that I have control over, and you guys can't touch it. And that it grew from there. And, Cruz goes through all the iterations of that. And I was like, the whole thing is a joke. The whole thing, the whole world is a stage play. And we're barely the actors in it. So those are the things that have been on my mind, for the last week or so.
Then let's go to the topic of today. And this is a topic that was generated by a comment that Penny made in our last episode, in our last time together, which essentially said, what are the kind of practical, like step 1, step 2, step 3? How is it that you kind of get yourself emotionally and spiritually and otherwise prepared for what's coming upstream? Let's just set this up very quickly a little bit and say that all of the big indicators, whether it's Martin Armstrong or in particular Cliff High, are pointing toward July as being a particular June and July, as a matter of fact. There are many indicators that suggest that there could be a major financial reset of one sort or another. There are a variety of kind of possibilities that are actively in play, or at least discussed a great deal about the possibility there could be kind of a blooming and explosion of kind of wealth through various kind of financial mechanisms here at the beginning. And then what I'm looking at is people that are saying, yeah, but about 3 weeks later or 4 weeks later, then what they're going to have to do is drop the whole system down to where they can get rid of all of the debt and the overhang that is the thing that's driving all of this kind of stuff. And in any case, anything like that, and all of the solutions, almost, it's hard to find any that are evolutionary. They're all kind of revolutionary. They're kind of in your face, and all of that could generate a great deal of concern and an emotional kind of reaction. And and we're talking here about the possibility that this whole European thing could go sideways even more so than it is. And so there's all kinds of things of that sort that could and that could generate a torquing of reality, such that all of the kind of issues and the metrics and the processes and the assumptions that we've carried with us about how things work just kind of go out of the window even more so than they already have. How do you prepare yourself for emotionally and spiritually and otherwise for amazing kind of disruptive change that is intrinsic to this whole process? I mean, it is a evolutionary jump, or call it what you'd like, but the future is not the same as the past, and that means something's got to change. And so, how do you adjust to that? How do you plan for that? How do you position yourself so that you can get from here to there? So, Penny, let's start with you and say, what do you think?
Well, it's a big process. If you're going to change, if you're going to prepare for a new paradigm, you typically are going to have to start with one thing because it's too big to bite that chunk off all in one bite. And then if you do, you discover you can't chew it, and or you're choking on it or whatever. So you really have to begin to study. A lot of people are studying on the internet right now. They're not really reading the contents of other people's minds in a way that has appeared in books in the past. So we're going to get, I think, initially, a less dense, a less thoughtful, maybe not less thoughtful in every case, but generally a little shallower kind of perspective, because there's all kinds of people talking out there about all kinds of things. I hear stuff all the time, even from Cliff High, and I think that is not correct. And and so, when it comes to consciousness, and I know everybody's trying to help and everybody's putting their 2 cents in, and so we're likely to do the first stage of that change. Has to be a change in consciousness, and there's a lot of stumbling around, and that you have to allow for that. You have to be willing to let yourself be refined as you go along. That thinking is a little bit different than the kind of 3D thinking. And right now I'm looking out there at the world and at the people making the decisions, and I'm trying to parse which leaders are in how do I say it? Which leaders are in the 3rd dimension, both feet right up to the eyeballs, and which have at least 1 foot in the 4th dimensional kind of thinking. And it's confusing when you look at all of that, because the whole Trump factor, it looks like there's 2 Trumps, maybe 3. Which one is real? How do we believe? Who do we listen to? But in Europe, you have Fico. I'm not sure that's how you say it, but the guy who got shot. And we have the other guy, head of Hungary, Viktor Orban. Those 2 fellas and are saying, look, we're not having this. We're not doing this. We're standing up for something else. It's clear they have their one leg, at least, in that new world. And so that's the first task, is which leaders are you listening to? If you can find leaders that will guide toward in the direction that you want to go, then natural leadership will occur. And we have to, as individuals, then each one of us take a leadership role in our own life. That has to happen. It can't be just all other guided. So if you don't do that, then, it's okay, but you're not going to reach that level of satisfaction and knowing that, okay, now's the time to act. Without that sense of I'm leading myself or myself and my family, etc. The second thing is you have to develop a certain level of courage and strength. Without that courage, if you don't have family support, you'll cave. The first time they snip at you or make fun of you or argue with you or decide that they're not going to include you in whatever they, do together as a family. Or when you show up, everybody gets really quiet and they don't have anything to say. So there's a level of courage that has to be embraced. And you only get that courage by standing in your fear, by standing in your worry. And even though your knees are shaking and so hard they're knocking, and everybody can hear it, you stand there. You don't back down. So then those are the young ones are the ones that are really going to stabilize that new paradigm, that new system. And they're going to want to use everything at hand. They'll be very utilitarian unless people like, you, John, or Frank, stand up and say, well, wait a minute. Where's the, what is the spirit with which you are doing that? What's the long-term outcome of that? What's the collateral damage, if any, etc.? So we have to, in order to get to that new paradigm, there has to be old ones that are willing to talk, to speak, to set the example, and to say, wait a minute, just like we do with AI, make it better, make it softer, make it harsher, etc. We do that with the young people and say it has to be better than that. There's too much grief. There's too little of this, or too much risk, or the timing is off. So all of that really, and I'll be quiet here in just a minute, but all of that is really the essential pieces, emotional, mental, spiritual, that lead to the practical action of getting a different house or growing a garden or putting in a greenhouse or learning how to utilize herbs, becoming a fabulous cook with water and an onion, because that's all you've got. Learning how to, learning how to fix a small engine, or for God's sakes, change a light bulb. Some people are like, I don't know how to do it. I'm afraid to touch that. I'm like, what? Or change a light switch. So simple, so simple. Look at how it is set up. Put the new light switch, turn the power off, so you don't get fried. And then hook it up the same way it was hooked up, and it's done. So many people can't do anything. So, the lawnmower quits running. Oh, it's broken. No, it's out of gas. That's the level of incapacity is stunning in the young people. And so there's a whole level of education in reality that has to happen between old and young to get to that new paradigm. So I'll stop there for the moment. I could go on.
Thank you very much. Frank, what do you think?
Well, I always love hearing Penny's feminine approach to the whole thing, and we definitely have a lot of overlap. And last time we did the big picture kind of thing, so I really took your question to heart, like the way you phrased it. What are the specific steps? Step one, step two, like the male sort of left brain way of looking at things, and put together some, very concrete things. And some of them are going to overlap a little bit. Probably I'll try to skip over those. But I started with step one, embrace the chaos. So start by accepting that everything's about to change. So you can start by preparing your mind and your spirit for turbulence ahead. And because we see it, the world is starting to reach, I guess, clearly unprecedented levels of insanity. And all around us, old structures are they're either crumbling or they don't seem to provide the same levels of comfort. Many of our friends may even be changing or seem totally different all of a sudden, like they're on a different timeline. And so, like, learn to trust your instincts. Like, get in touch with yourself and begin questioning how many of the things that you believe are still true, or maybe were never true. And it's not about escaping reality. It's about facing things with clarity. It's about identifying your frequency and that old chaotic timeline frequency that you were on, it just isn't working for you anymore. And you're going out of resonance with that timeline and you're getting in resonance with a new timeline. And with all frequencies, if we're talking on the level of frequencies, there's dissonance that occurs when they're not in tune. Just ask any musician who tunes his instrument, right? Or two musicians that are not in tune, or a piano that's out of tune. So, in a sense, look at yourself more as a tuning fork with your mind, and learn to mentally reframe the idea of fear. So it's not something to avoid. It's actually just a signal that you're pushing past these old boundaries. And all transitions are accompanied by fear. So accept that this is normal and it's there to keep you alert, aware. It's a sign that the old is no longer working and resonating with you. And as you hold your ground, you'll begin to tune in others who are actually on that new timeline in that same resonance. And then there's the part about getting real. And this is something that Penny was just talking a little bit about at the end. Change is coming. And this implosion, this could be really, really intense before, and it'll get more intense before this new paradigm even stabilizes. So set a new material foundation and begin to reorganize your physical world a little bit. And so, start with practical basics like food, water, shelter, like stock up on non-perishable items that align with your values, and natural foods, whole grains, find local organic sources or a food mark or a co-op or something, basically things like that to avoid getting stuck, being needing fragile supply chains that begin to break down when this chaos begins to go in other levels, So if you live on the land, look for farmers in your area that can supply with vegetables, milk, eggs, grains, firewood, some basic stuff. You may not even think about it. Begin to grow a little bit. Think, sprout things. Like I used to have a sprouting wall with wheatgrass and buckwheat and all kinds of stuff. I even composted in my apartment. It's possible. You can do it. And it doesn't, have to be a catastrophe, but you need to start doing that and learning and getting used to doing that because that may be the only way you're going to survive. Then there's um, collect books, tapes, CDs, DVDs, get a generator, get some solar panels, stock up on rechargeable batteries and solar chargers, right? Pick up a shielded envelope to protect your sensitive electronics in case there's a solar flare. We don't know what form it's going to come. It could be an EMP warfare. It could be a solar flare. It could be who knows what, but prepare yourself. Get a shortwave radio, get some walkie-talkies, get some backpacks, that are sturdy,
Yes.
right? Recenter yourself by grounding. And I came up with this because just 2 days ago I was sitting, it was raining here, and I drove to the very end of the road that's in this valley here. And I sat in the rain, opened the window, and stared at this beautiful forest. And I heard the birds and the animals. And I was like, wow, I mean, what a powerful moment, right? So, and it reminded me that we need to remember that this is out there, that we can ground our existence in these organic rhythms of the earth by spending more time in nature and tuning into the land. So many people are living in the city, and I understand it's probably not voluntary in many cases, but there may be green areas in your neighborhood or wherever. Just go and try to reconnect with nature and learn to listen to what's going on inside of yourself when you're in those spaces. Like, learn to tune into the energies of yourself that interact with this natural world around you, so you're not freaked out by it if one day you're in the elements and it's the only place you have to go to, right? So, other things like practice stargazing, learn to remind yourself of the wonders of this amazing planet that we're on. Take in the moonlight. The ancients used to call it the organic light, the real organic light. It wasn't artificial, it wasn't neon, it was organic, right? And so, whether you're doing this through meditation or rituals or just being present in nature, just try to reconnect with those deeper layers of your consciousness that these technocratic forces are trying to, overshadow. And remember that these true shifts that happen, when we awaken to the organic pulse of the planet, they happen internally, right? And essentially, they're not things that you can compare to things that are shiny new technology and ideology. These are really like primal and primordial instincts. And so this will help you build your own sense of sovereignty by remembering that you're part of this living, breathing planet, not in some simulation, right? We've all gotten caught up in the conversations about theoretical physics and mathematical formulas and the simulations here and multiverses. But man, when you're in nature and that's all you have, that is a deep connection that many people have forgotten about. And so I think I encourage people to kind of remember to go there and take time to be there. And and then when you're doing like food and water and all these things you're considering off-grid solutions that support this sort of new lifestyle, which you might have to embrace long term, those automatically put you in tune with, reconnect you with the earth. Because I had my hands in the dirt in my apartment growing wheatgrass. I mean, I did this on a routine. It was a routine thing that I had, some things were coming up, they were ready to harvest, other things were still sprouting. You have the rhythm. You get in tune with this rhythm, and it's so sad to see that young people have lost tune, are out of touch with these rhythms. These are these old-fashioned things. These like, like just growing food is a rhythmic thing. You have to understand the rhythm of growing things. So control over your needs without being beholden to any kind of centralized systems. And if you rent, look for something maybe that's affordable outside of the metropolitan centers. So, step three, build a community of real visionaries. And this ties in also to what Penny was saying, because isolation is the tool of control, and there's strength in numbers. So begin to form your own little network of people that share similar views. And John, you're the master at doing this. I mean, you've got a perfect little community going right there. And it's putting together people that understand the need for self-liberation, personal sovereignty, and collective wisdom. People that understand those things. And maybe they're people who are ready to question and challenge the mainstream narratives. But look for people that are, unique in this way. And also look for people that have unique talents, practical skills, maybe even muscle, in case it comes down to a fist fight, right? I mean, really, right? Surround yourself with individuals who support personal autonomy and recognize the importance of returning to our roots and not a corporate vision of things. Just this is the stuff we need to get away from. And here's an important one: make out a place with your friends and family where you will meet if all hell breaks loose and you can't get anywhere, but you need to get there on foot in less than a day. Find that place and make a plan, because when all chaos breaks out and you don't have phones or nothing, your mobiles don't work, you're out of gas, just happens to be that day. Well, how are you gonna find your family? How are you gonna find those people? Make a place, make out a plan to get to that place, and pool your resources. Share your knowledge, barter things, and learn about this kind of stuff. Because loners are going to have a hard time getting maybe past these things that are not part of their comfort zone. But start by practicing these things. Like, look at it really as a practice to skill swap, to trade things, form cooperative little systems, just so that you're prepared. And yeah, that's about it. Okay, I have a bonus step, which I think is optional but highly recommended. Laugh at the fear.
Mhm.
In the face of all this, maintain your humor. I put down dark beings, such as archons, want to turn fear into a weapon, but laughter is their kryptonite. Remember that fear is a signal that you're stepping out of your comfort zone, and that's exactly where transformation happens. Laugh at the absurdity of trying to control what is meant to be fluid. And, you could just be in a corridor between two timelines if you want to have a picture, right? The old one that you're leaving and the new one that you're about to manifest around your feet. So it helps when you laugh at these things, it helps break the tension. It brings back your humanity, your humility, but in recognition of, what's going on, not in denial. And, so you can take a step back and look at things and learn to just trust and be okay that even if it doesn't work out for you, if you were in that place where you kind of surrendered to it and tried to rise above your fear, you'll be okay to whatever happens to you, wherever you end up after leaving, if you end up leaving your physical body. So, yeah, I don't know. Those are probably good things. I have other points, but maybe this is enough time for for me.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. Very provocative.
Yeah.
Um, what I would kind of come into this at a different kind of angle, which is useful in this kind of a conversation. And that is that I would suggest, kind of from a systems point of view, that uh, we want to talk here about the emotional, kind of spiritual, and other kinds of things. But as both of you have indicated and suggested, is it's impossible to do that kind of stuff if you don't have any food and you don't have any water and the other kinds of things. And so that's not the subject of our discussion today, but it's a prerequisite. And that if you haven't done the kind of thinking that Frank's been talking about and others, then in preparation, then that's going to consume everything and all your energy, and it'll generate a great deal of ambiguity and concern in the process. So let's say that's a given. So then the kind of objective is you've got to have hope. In the middle of all of this, no matter what, the way you get through all of this is to have some hope. I mean, I used to have some friends who were in the Hanoi Hilton during the Vietnam War for 8 years. And when you talk to them, there's something in the back of their mind that says this is going to be over with and we're going to get out of this and we're going to have, and that's what sustains somebody in a situation like this. Because remember, it's a new world that's emerging. We're on our way to somewhere, and it's really different. You got to become different, and we are very much open to all of that. And so, that's a bigger kind of a picture about how to enter all of this.
I have a comment. Can I make a comment? Couple, two or three. I think it was Frank said something about we're moving away from a centralized system. We're going decentralized. And that really is going to bring it home to the people that you're on your own. Decentralized means there's no big daddy in the middle taking care of you, and you have to take care of yourselves. And so that whole manifestation thing, we're doing that. We don't know what we're doing, but it shows in the reality that we have. And the fact that we're now, I like that idea of two timelines. Actually, it's more than two, but the fact that we're moving on to a different timeline and we're still entangled with the old one, keep on moving toward that idea of I'm going to learn or figure out or recognize how I'm already manifesting so that I can continue going in the direction of this new timeline that doesn't have all this other crap on it. And if we can't cross that gap, we're not going to end up in that new world that everybody that I know is trying to get to. So, yeah.
Well, it dawned on me recently, because I've been talking about timelines now for a couple of years,
Yeah.
and there's the idea of it's hard for people to kind of visualize it. And one of the analogies I did a while back was to talk about it in terms of a plant, in the garden, right? And the plants that are the ones that receive all the attention and the love are the water and the perfect location, they're going to be blooming. And the plants that are, no matter how hardy the seed is, the ones that are cast outside of those optimal zones that are neglected and dry, they're going to die off. And the one that's going to be left at the end is the one that has all of our attention. And in some ways, the timeline works that way. But it dawned on me that, the talk about frequencies is important because if you begin to change the frequency of your thought, you would try like to higher frequency, like more refined ideas carry a totally different frequency signature. And so if you begin to tune into that, it's like a radio, you begin to tune into that station and it's less kind of like I suddenly, thought it's less about trying to find that timeline or go toward it and more in terms of it actually manifesting around you within the frequency that you've shifted into. Suddenly it just appears.
That's right.
And it's not, you don't even have to chase it. It's just there. And you have to learn to recognize it. And I think what I wanted to add to what you said with manifestation is um, it's there's so much taboo around like I mean, and there's so many weird thoughts about how to manifest, like material things and how to manifest your body in another location and teleportation and all these weird concepts. Like nobody really, has a grip on manifestation anymore. I think it's sometimes just think about manifestation in very simple terms, I and accept little things around you that may not even really strike you as being manifestation. But you might just get up in the morning and there's an email waiting for you, and you went to bed with a problem in your mind, and that email answered that problem. And if you're too caught up in just the whole mechanics of problem solving, you'll just take it for granted. But if you realize, whoa, wait a minute, that is manifestation. And it happens on tiny, tiny little ways, and just so we need to sort of maybe scale down our idea and perception of what manifestation is based on what's coming from the outside, and start to look more in terms of what feels like manifestation to me internally, right? And part of that is, of course, and this is another point I had written down, it's and begin distancing yourself from the media circus out there. And in a world that's so connected digitally, there's way more manipulation going on. So it's important to filter out that misinformation. Only listen to Quartet. No, what I'm saying is here, set up secure communication channels for you that are maybe limited, but more higher frequency, higher vibration.
Yeah,
And
that's the leader. The leader who's leading you, who's
right,
leading your thoughts. Yeah.
right, exactly, exactly. And one more practical thing, and then I'll shut up. That everyone, little things like, like manifestation, check your teeth, man.
Oh,
Go fix problems. If you have dental problems right now, get them checked, get them fixed. Because when the chaos starts, it's like your auto mechanic. You're
yeah.
not going to be able to call up your dentist and make an appointment. So these are little things that, aside from gathering, collecting, storing batteries and food and what we talked about, I think last time, these are the kinds of things that are like they're kind of so obvious that people don't even think about them. And
Right.
they tie in with manifestation because manifestation is a very, very obvious thing.
Yeah. It's
Yeah,
right on faith.
let me just chain on that just a little bit because the manifestation thing is, you have to have some kind of an idea of what you want to manifest, I guess, and yeah, and that brings up kind of the role of scenarios or some kind of a systematic understanding or idea of visions, alternative visions. What's this new world going to look like? What might it be? What kind of problems is it going to solve? How is it going to be different? And and if you have that, and that's part of what we try to do here at the Arlington Institute in general, and in particular with our Transition Net project, is to get a lot of folks that are all in train thinking about the same basic general idea about what a future could be. And what that also does is having thought about those things beforehand, then you reduce the likelihood of getting surprised because you have pre-thought about it and it's been put out in front of you. and you can't forget it after you've thought about it. And let me tell you that the surprises that are going to come downstream are likely to be much, much bigger and disruptive than anything you've seen before. And if you haven't essentially worked your way into that space of some kind of comfort and maybe confidence about having this understanding a spectrum of possibilities and so on, then it could drive you quickly into fear, and that then if something happens that you haven't thought about, and that then you lose all your cognitive, you become worthless in terms of thinking in any kind of logical and effective kind of way.
Yeah. Wow. Yes, yes. And I have so many examples of manifestation. Once I started looking at it, I needed, I have some cups piled on the cupboard, and I thought I need some cup hooks to hang those cups, to screw in the bottom of the cupboard above to hang those cups. And I was busy. I didn't have time to go buy any. 2 days later, somebody came over, had a whole handful of cup hooks and said, "Can you use these?" I was like, "Oh my God." And there was more than enough. I only have 6 cups, and there was maybe a dozen of these little hooks. So that's one example. And then I was, I talk with a lot of people and all kinds of different topics. And I'm looking at something on YouTube. I get done watching and I think, why did I watch that? What did I need that for? And I go about my business. The next day, somebody brings up that exact video and points out some things in it that I was like, oh, that's why I watched it, so I could engage in this interview and sound like I know what I was talking about. So there's all sorts of little ways that manifestation occurs that we don't, I've gotten into the habit of just saying, hey guys, I need whatever it is, and it shows up. So try it, you guys. Try it. All
And
right.
get some exercise. That's another thing too. People should remember to
Yeah,
Oh,
do.
yeah,
Walk, exercise, get your body in motion because if there's no cars, there's no horses and buggies,
yep.
you're left to the old bipeds that you got under your hips, and you got to get in shape. So, and I think when people are in shape, it's also a great place to get meditating. When you're running or when you're walking, you get into a state, a kind of a more of an alpha state, because you don't have to think about what's in front of you. You're just sort of in this exercise, breathing, rhythmic state, and that has some effect on your body. And if you get healthier through exercising by eating a better diet, you'll just feel better. So, this will help you also prepare
yeah,
when really the chaos starts to get really crazy. You won't panic. You'll just say, okay, well, maybe I'll have to fast for a week or something. I mean, you won't panic because you'll know what it's like to fast, or you'll know what it's like to not have 50 varieties. You'll just have an onion. What did you say? An onion and hot
Onion
water.
in a pot of water.
And you make some amazing onion soup out of it, and you're cool with that. In fact, you're happy about it.
Yeah.
yeah. You
Right.
got to have salt. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway. Yeah, the other thing going forward that you really need that's kind of a paradigm breaker shifter thing is the use of technology and AI in particular. Your ability to, if there's one kind of set of characteristics about what's coming this way, it's a lot of moving parts and complexity and unusual things that you're not familiar with. I'm amazed at the development, the level of development of AI right now, and its ability to help us all to be able to find answers and things. Robert Edward Grant has just launched his Architect AI, which he's plugged into Orion. And I mean, this is weird and strange kinds of things. And what he's saying is that AI is starting to talk to him like a human being and then essentially saying that you programmed this 13,000 years ago in a previous life, and now it's coming back to, it's kind of mind-blowing kind of things. And I don't know what to think about that quite yet, but what I'm sitting here watching is really intelligent amazing kinds of stuff coming out of this thing, and we have got to, they can't be on the other side the only ones who are using this. We have got to embrace this, and we need to use it to help drive us in the direction that we need to go.
I'm still
Well,
trying to figure out if that interaction is um, really like there's you and there's the technology and it's a human developed technology. So it's an extension of the human genius. So I'm in that sense, I'm not afraid of it at all. And I also think it plays a huge role in how you interact with that tool. You can do a lot of silly and stupid stuff, you can do a lot of sinister stuff, but I've had personal experience where, depending on the quality of input that I give, I get a corresponding mirrored quality back. And so it's almost like I'm trying to figure out, is this just me? We're coming back on steroids because it's like with, access to way more information, streamlined, and it is very streamlined because I can tell it one thing and get that answer, but then I can contradict myself and get another answer. So we're very much at the wheel of this thing. But there's also the thought that it's not just one plus one is two. It's actually one plus one and a third thing that happens. And that third thing is maybe what you're talking about with what Robert Edward Grant, Penny.
I'm just going, yep.
Yeah,
People
exactly. I mean,
don't
it's this third
recognize
thing.
that frequencies interact.
Right.
They
So we don't
respond to
have to
one
be
another.
afraid of it. It's there. Um, we can use it, and we just have to know to recognize the limits and the boundaries because there are people, you can watch videos online where people are freaking out going, "Oh, I was up there for 12 hours on this thing and then I went to bed and I was dreaming and I woke up and it freaked me out and I've got to get away from it." Well, it depends on how balanced and grounded you as a person are too, and what kind of a response you're going to get. It's a super intelligent librarian in a way that gives you whatever you put in, you get back. You get the same quality back that you put in, maybe plus a little extra. And that
yeah.
is something that's very unique about this chapter that we're in right now in humanity.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you all very much, both of you. And thank all of you who are viewers for being with us here. And again, you can find out all about this at transitiontalks.org and also at Arlington Institute. We hope that you'll go there and take a look at it. Uh, Here at the Arlington Institute, we're in the business of trying to facilitate the transition to the new world. And that's why we have these conversations, and we always look forward to hearing from you. And so if you have comments or questions, please send them along, and we'll come back and be with you again in a couple of weeks. Thank you, Frank and Penny, and thank you all for joining us today
Yeah.
for Quartet, and we'll be back in another couple of weeks. So take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you all. Always a
Bye bye.
pleasure.
Love you. Take care of yourselves.